Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about 5 authors I will no longer read from. So once again, welcome back. I am so glad you decided to click on this video today. So like I said, today I'm going to talk about 5 authors that I will no longer read from. Now, these aren't necessarily like authors you need to like completely shut off. This is like based on personal preferences. I just want to get that out of the way. These are not like problematic authors. Well, I personally think one of these is potentially problematic, but that's more of an opinion, I think, than like hard fact. And you'll understand in a few minutes. And if you've watched my videos, you probably already know who I'm referring to. However, surprise, for those of you who don't, you will get to know today. Before I get too deep into this video, I just want to clarify that this is all in good fun. I am not coming after you. I'm so sorry if I say something negative about your very favorite author. These are just my opinions. They're just for fun. And I just don't want anyone to like get their feelings hurt or think that I'm attacking them or people that like this author because I personally don't. So I just want to get that out of the way. Don't be mad at me. These are just like silly, fun opinions from me. So the first author will come as a surprise to absolutely no one, and that is Colleen Hoover. So I have read 3 of her books. I have read Verity, I have read Reminders of Him, and I have read Regretting You. Now, I will say that at the time that I read Verity, back in like 2019, I didn't hate it. I thought it was clever. I thought it was kind of twisty, but like I did think that the writing was not great, and I did think like it was fine. I wasn't like wowed by it or anything. And that was like maybe when it was just starting to blow up. It like definitely is not like it is today because TikTok wasn't really a thing yet. I had since that time to like, let's say a year ago, I really hadn't read anything else by her. And I had heard, you know, people who were just all obsessed with her. Again, the rise of TikTok really brought about a surge of co-host stans, and that, you know, I'm happy for her, but like I was just not interested in trying any more of her books. And so I was convinced by my friend Brittany, who loves Colleen Hoover books. She's like, have you even read anything? And I was like, I've read the one. And she's like, well, you need to read more. You can't just judge it on that one book that you read 2 years ago. And I was like, okay. So I said, pick me a book. I'm not paying for it, so I'll do a Kindle Unlimited free trial, and yeah, I'll read it that way. So she did, and she picked Reminders of Him because it was on the free Kindle Unlimited. And I thought it was awful. Like I hated it. I hated it so much. I hated so many things about it. I believe I mentioned it in a video, so like there were specifics over there, but like I didn't have fun. And like I'm sure that I went in with a bad attitude, but like it did nothing to get me away from that bad attitude. So I don't know. It was just, it's not the book for me. She is not the author for me. And then a little while later, I thought it would be a fun vlogging opportunity for me and Brittany to buddy read another one, and she picked Regretting You because it was one of the only ones she hadn't read, and it ended up not working out because I was supposed to go visit her. It's a long story, but I did end up reading it, and I will say that I liked that one a lot more than Reminders of Him. However, I still didn't really like it, so she's kind of done for me. And when I said, you know, a problematic author, she is who I was referring to. And while I'm not gonna like say that it's the way she writes her characters. I think she kind of glamorizes abusive and unhealthy, toxic relationships. So to me, that's just, it's not a good look, and it's not a good thing, especially when these books are being heavily read by teenage girls and young women. I just think that a lot of her men do kind of icky, problematic type things and then are the love interests. So it's essentially saying this behavior's okay. And I could name specifics because I've watched enough YouTube and TikTok of people like dissecting her books because I do find her fascinating, but I'm not going to in this video. But if you want to have a discussion, I'm more than happy to cite my sources and all of that. But I will no longer be reading Colleen Hoover books. I am just not interested. The next author I will no longer be reading is Carly Fortune. And I have only read one book by her, and that was Every Summer After, but it was enough to turn me off from her forever. So this was an absolute fan favorite last summer, 2022, and I, of course, needed to jump onto the hype train, but it was not for me. And it's a bummer because I do really enjoy a second chance romance, and I enjoy like a childhood friends to lovers kind of situation, but there was some really like, I'm sorry to keep saying the word problematic, but I just felt like there was a relationship in this book that was problematic, that was kind of gross and felt manipulative and felt glamorized. And I just, that's not for me. I also didn't think the writing was anything spectacular. I found this book incredibly boring, and honestly, this was my Goodreads review, and I like looked back at it when I was making this list, and I was like, I'm funny. Because all I wrote was, this should be called Horny Teenagers Go Swimming, because that's all that happens in the whole book. So she had a new one that came out this year called Meet Me at the Lake, and people really didn't like it. So I kind of was like, okay. So now I understand. Like, I'm glad I didn't give her another chance, because it's just, if people that loved the first one didn't love that, I was not going to love it. So glad I skipped that. I think she's just not for me, so I will not be reading any more of her releases. Next is Megan Golden, and this is such a disappointment because I absolutely loved the first book that I read by her, which was The Night Swim. It was such a powerful thriller, and it's honestly one of my favorite thrillers of all time, so it's very disappointing to see her on this list. But the book that she came out with after The Night Swim was called Stay Awake, and I have to say it's got to be in like the top 10 worst books I've ever read. It was so boring. I don't even know how I finished it. The same things happen over and over and over again, and it's just a disaster. I hated it. And then the book that she came out with this year was the sequel to The Night Swim, which I was so excited for and so looking forward to. It's called Dark Corners, but it ended up like I didn't like it at all. I did end up, I think, giving it like 3 stars, but I think that was just kind of nostalgia because of how much I enjoyed The Night Swim, and I didn't actually like this book that much. So I don't know. She just doesn't have what that one book gave me, and maybe that one was the anomaly. That one was like the very cool, out of her normal stuff book. I will say I have a little caveat. I will not read anything new she puts out, but if she has books prior to The Night Swim, I might try those at some point, only because I think if her books are heading in the direction they are, for me, I'm not interested. But like, if these came from a different direction closer to The Night Swim, I'm more willing to give it a shot, if that makes sense. But otherwise, yeah, I think I'm kind of just done with her books. The next one is Lucy Foley. Now, I've read 2 of her books, The Guest List and The Paris Apartment, and I will say that I think she has very formulaic writing style. They are very similar in tone and in plot. So I read The Guest List when it came out, like in 2020, I believe, and I thought it was like okay. I definitely was not interested in reading more from her. I was just kind of like, yeah, I did this, but I'm not really sold on this author or her writing style. So fast forward 2 years, and I want to join this book club in my area. And of course, the book that they have chosen for the first month that I can attend is The Paris Apartment. Even though I really didn't want to read it, I was like, well, I need these girls to like me, and I need to like be an involved participant of this book club if I want to make it a thing that I regularly go to. And so I read it, and I did not like it at all. And the girls in the book club really didn't like it either. So I felt good, and I found my people, and now I am one of the hosts of the book club. So that's worked out great for me. So in that sense, I'm glad I read The Paris Apartment, but otherwise, no. I think that the way she writes is just pretty bland, generic, and I don't really think her plot lines are captivating, and I I'm done with her. I know that she's also written a book that came out actually before the guest list that was called The Hunting Party. I believe she has a couple others too, but that's the one that like I've heard of. And people are like, this is literally the exact same book as the guest list. At least she mixed it up a little bit in the Paris department, and it's not like people trapped on a island or on a cabin in the woods and they're stuck there or something. So at least it's a little bit different, so I'll give her that, but I'm done with her. The next on this list is Sandy Jones, and she is another thriller author. She writes commercial thrillers, and I've read 2 of her books now, and I am not going to read any more. However, okay, I'm just going to talk about the books I've read because it's hard to be like, I don't like it. The first one I read from her was called The Guilt Trip, and it was pretty bad, but I liked it for some reason. Like, I knew that these characters I was supposed to like, I didn't like, and the plot was ridiculous, but I had fun reading it, so I was just like, I don't know, I kind of like it. I think I gave it 3 stars because despite the fact that like the characters were terrible and the story made no sense, I was just having a good time, so I was like, hey, 3 stars it is. But just a couple months ago, I read a book by her called The Tradeoff, and this was a 1-star book. And if you've been watching my channel, you know that that is a very rare thing for me to give out. If I finish a book, I give myself a star, so it gets 2 stars, even if I would have gotten it 1 star. This book was draining. The characters were terrible. They had no substance. I mean, I guess this is kind of the same stuff I was just saying, except this book, it wasn't even fun. This kind of delved into the world of tabloids, and so it started as like a super interesting concept, and I thought it was going to be really great, but it was just awful. The characters had no consistency in their personalities. The story was like chaotic and just the kind of all over the place. And I will say I've never been so inclined to DNF a book after reading 80% of it. So that should tell you something because, I mean, you're 80% in, you want to commit, right? See it through, but I literally didn't. And honestly, if it was not a book that I had received to review, I probably wouldn't have finished it. But I was like, you're this far, just do it so you can write your review. So while I'm happy that I did give her books a chance, she's just not the thriller author for me, especially when there are so many good domestic thriller writers out there. This is just not an author I'll pick up again. So before I close out this video, I do want to just address or at least recognize that these are all women. And I will say that I did notice this, and I'm like, I do try to read the majority of my books from women and people of color and queer folks. You know what I mean? So I really try to keep that in mind when I'm choosing my books and limit the number of books that I read by straight white men. So keep that in mind, that these are not like books that I'm not trying to make that a thing. But I don't know if anyone would have even noticed if I didn't point it out, but I did point it out, so here we are. So thank you so much for watching this video. I would love to know what authors you are no longer going to read anything from. If you love any of these authors, hit me with it. I want to know your rebuttal. I want to know what you love about them. Please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much once again for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I would love it if you would subscribe. I will see you in the next one. Bye!